Hi folks, so I'm here on the Pennine Way at a place called Coldham Clough near the Clapper Bridge, and this is about 2 miles west of Hebden Bridge. If you get this far you will have done about 68-70 kilometres. Now I'm hoping this video will be helpful in terms of giving the detail that you actually need to do the completion, and not being in the 50% who actually fail to make it to the end of the Pennine Way. So the first thing we need to do from a planning point of view is decide the direction of travel. Are we going south to north or north to south? In the UK, most of the winds blow in a southwesterly direction. So the recommendations in terms of which way to hike is usually south to north or west to east. The other advantage about going south to north is the fact that you'll have the sun on your back, so not in your eyes. Also useful for if you're drying any gear out and you have it on your back, it'll dry quicker. So in this video I am making the assumption that we're going south to north, as I did when I did the Pennine Way. Now the Pennine Way is a serious undertaking. It's 268 miles in length and over 11,000 meters in height, which is greater than Mount Everest. Also the underfoot conditions are pretty bad, probably some of the worst in England, and it generally takes about 19 days to complete. And then if you have to allow a day of travel to get to the start and maybe a day at the finish as well, obviously you're then committing to 3 weeks in total. So assuming we're starting in the south, then the place we need to be is Edale. And the great thing about Edale is it's got its own railway station. There's also a cafe nearby and a pub, a campsite, a YHA, and the station is probably about 500 meters from the actual start, and it's just straight out the station, turn left, and about half a kilometre down the road. And then when you get there, you're facing a pub and you turn left or head west. It's pretty straightforward to start. However, the finish is a different situation. There's no station at the finish. And then if you think, well, okay, I'll get the bus now, even that's a bit of a challenge. You have to get a bus to Berwick-upon-Tweed to get to the railway station, and you have to go via Kelso. All in all, it's about a 2 hours journey if you're catching the bus. The best thing to do is try and kind of pair up or meet somebody else as you get towards the end. Keep that in mind and see if you can buddy with someone to get a taxi together. So I finished it in 25 and the cost for a taxi was 60 quid. So yeah, my contribution was £30. So yeah, something to really think about and be aware of. Okay, what's next? Navigation, I think. In terms of navigation, I have to say the signage is pretty diabolical. In fact, I would say it's the worst of all the national trails. As an example, here's a picture of the one that's nearest to here. Is a good example of how bad they generally are. It's about time they were kind of redone, I would say. But of course you can't rely on the signage for navigation. You're kind of there for reassurance and maybe trying to point out the difference between going the Pennine Way or the Pennine Bridle Way. So you have to consider other alternative means. The first thing I would look at is the actual maps. And the maps I use are these, which are the Harvey's trail maps. And for the Pennine Way, you actually need two. One for the north and one for the south. And I use those very much in the early stages when I'm planning the route and the distances I'm going to cover and where I'm likely to stay and where I'll get resupply. Then the other thing that gives more detail, so when I get down to the absolute detail, then the thing I would recommend is the Trailblazers, and their series is good for overall, and I particularly liked it for the Pennine Way. What they do is actually give you the detail of all the hotels, pubs, campsites, cafes. Yeah, a lot of detail. The other thing that's very good as well is they give you different itineraries depending on the types of accommodation you're going to use. So yeah, if you're going to use campsites and wild camping, if you're going to use hostels, and if you're going to use B&Bs. And the other thing I like is within those different types of accommodation, they'll give you three different speeds or three different itineraries for the time it's going to take you. So the next thing to think about in terms of navigation, of course the other thing is you can use your GPS app. Just for interest, I use Hiker app. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it over any other, but they're definitely worth having. With 268 miles, as you can imagine, there are quite a number of alternatives that you can take along the way. The first one is probably around this particular area. As I said, we are near Hebden Bridge. Hebden Bridge, it's called the Hebden Bridge Loop, and you'll meet it round about 67-68 kilometres, and it's a diversion for resupply. When you use the word loop, that to me makes it sound as though it's going to be quite a bit of extra, but in actual fact it's just an extra 2 kilometres, and it's worth heading into Hebden Bridge. You've kind of got everything there, and it's the first opportunity from when you've started. But if you've come across any problems, like, I don't know, something to do with you need more tent pegs, there's actual outdoor shops there, there's pharmacies, lots of cafes and pubs, there's a hostel as well. So it's actually a good place for resupply, and I would recommend it. I didn't do it myself on the day, but I wished I had, because I researched it subsequently. And it's a great place. I would definitely recommend it highly, as you can tell. After that, the next official diversion is to a place called Bowes, and it adds 4 miles. And also the options of resupply are not that great there. I think it's a place to possibly go more if you're looking for B&B accommodation. It's not one I did. The other reason you might choose that particular route is it does mean you avoid quite a boggy area. After that, I think the next one to consider is a place called Alston, and there you'll find the Heritage Railway, and I think it's the South Tyneside Trail. Now the great thing there is if you take that option, you're following a railway line obviously, and when the Heritage Railway stops, you're using the bed of the disused railway, and so as you can imagine it's fairly flat. Whereas if you keep to the Pennine Way, that's kind of like on the side of a hillside mainly, and you're kind of going through stiles and gates, and I think if the South Tyneside Railway had been in place when the Pennine Way was opened, I think that's the route it would have actually gone. And I would recommend it. It won't necessarily save you distance so much. It was just the underfoot conditions are better and will save you time because of it being flat, etc. Now the other one to consider, quite people do this if they're trying to avoid a bit of a scramble. So talking about Pennine, so you can cut across and sort of go south of Pennine directly to Horton in Ribblesdale. I actually preferred going over the top. If you go over the top as well, rather than taking the dogleg back into Horton in Ribblesdale, you can go straight across. I'll show this on the map. So the other two route alternatives, the first one is, it just adds half a mile, and I used it to make sure I could get some water. And the second one is virtually at the end, and there's no difference in distance, but you go quite high up and can get great scenery. But yeah, by that point I was just glad to get to the finish, and the weather conditions meant I would have been crazy to go high up at that point. So yeah, it depends if you want to see the scenery or you want to get to the pub. Can you imagine which one I chose? If you're talking about the Pennine Way, you have to talk about the weather. Now, I actually did this in April, and I had some glorious sunny days, but I also had one night where it was -5 degrees Celsius. Boy, that was cold. But I had planned accordingly, so I did have a 4-season tent and a 4-season sleeping bag. And so, yeah, you need to kind of plan for the unexpected on the Pennine Way. It's notorious for how boggy it actually is. And you're not just talking about the odd mile, but you're talking about miles of bogland. So I was actually wearing my leather boots to make sure my feet were always dry. And gaiters is definitely another addition to think about as well. So yeah, really think about the kind of terrain you're going to meet. It's really rugged, very remote, and the weather conditions can be absolutely appalling. So plan accordingly. You might think, because of the remoteness of the Pennine Way, that you're going to struggle with accommodation and resupply. Well, I've found that's not actually the case. And I think it's because the trail has been open for over 50 years now, and commerce and the locals have kind of accommodated that. So I'm going to go through following my route of south to north and give you the insight as to what I actually found. Now, I actually did do a degree of wild camping. I'm not going to cover that, other than to say that I think compared to a lot of trails, wild camping on the Pennine Way is actually relatively easy, especially if you've got the experience. You're not going to struggle, I don't think. I did obviously need a shower occasionally, so I did use a number of campsites and hostels as well. So as you see, you have all the beer, wine and spirits you might need, and pot noodles down there, but more importantly you can have pies which they'll heat for you. And so for an extra £5 I got the upgrade to the summer house. Yeah, doing a full charge, and you get milk and tea and coffee. So cold drinks in the fridge. There you go. Blase and chocolate down at the bottom. charging point. My home for the night. So yes, I'm at Britain's highest inn, 1700 feet. And I'll try and sort of show you around later on if I can in the pub and what have you. The great thing is they charge £10, but it goes to charity, it goes to air ambulance. And also, just at the side there, they do have a shower and a toilet. So yeah, a pretty good deal, I would say. Obviously I'm going in the pub to have some food and something to drink, no doubt. And what can I say, while away the evening. Wow, short of nothing. Ice cream in the freezer. I'm not sure it's the weather for that. And they haven't got any anyhow, but they have got milk. And water as well. And an interesting picture. And a bin. Can't believe how useful a bin is. I always end up carrying so much rubbish with me. And a recycling point. And you don't even have to do the washing up. Cushion on the seat as well. Everything's really been thought of. As you can see, you find me in a very different place today. So I've arrived in Milton in Teesdale. It was probably around about 3 o'clock actually, having done the 16 miles from Town Hill. And yeah, it was quite nice because it was mainly downhill. The campsite that I'm on, 5 whole English pounds for the night. And that includes showers and toilets and water. But it is a bit strange because it's on a site with mobile homes as well. But hey ho, one of the attractions originally when I read up about it was that it had its own bar and you could get food. Sod's law, it doesn't open till Easter. But if we wanted a pizza, Oz's Pizzas is over there. There's a newsagent shop further down. £10 for the night. Table and chairs if you need them. And the water is just there against the fence. And I'm tucked away in the corner. So Dufton is a really beautiful village. And there's the local pub, the Stag Inn, which I actually had my evening meal there. It's really nice inside, nice old country pub. And they've got extensive gardens out the back that look out onto the fell that you can see there in the distance. Down there you can see Greg's hut, famous on the Pennine Way, providing shelter in hours of need. Jupiter Cottage Honesty Stand. Apparently they even sell shoelaces. I can get a top up of water. Oh yes. Looks like it's freshly baked, eh? Oh, it does say open Easter to October. And it says eggs from our rescued ex-battery hens. Not sure I'll be carrying that, but I'll enjoy the flapjack. in here they've even got a blister kit. And here's the YHA tucked in round the back. Okay, this is a first. I've never seen beer in the thing before. Guinness or lager, as well as Coke, of course. The Yearning Saddle Lamb Inn Mountain Refuge. And there's the view from the window. So you may be wondering why I'm not going to spend the night in here. Well, it would be very cold. I think you'd need about 6 people in here to warm it up. And the door looks quite drafty to me. I mean, from what I can see, quite a few people have stayed here. I'd imagine if the rain's actually pouring down outside and the wind's doing its worst, then this is probably a good option. But I think my tent's going to be warmer. Just one person warming up a small area. When you get to the finish, make sure you go into the Borders Hotel. And in fact, that is the official finish. But go inside and claim your certificate. It's well worth having and framing like I've done. But also, you can claim your free half pint. In the days of Alfred Wainwright, it was a free pint because he started the trend and he paid for all the pints for all the completers. But now it's the brewery and you get a half pint, which obviously I topped up to a pint. It's the only way to celebrate is having a pint in hand. This is it, the official finish. I think I feel like those old boots we just saw. Well spent. Yes, I've achieved it. Pennine Way. All my life I've wondered about doing the Pennine Way. I think I left it rather late, but I got there in the end. I'm quite pleased to manage to do it in 14 days. Really chuffed with that. Right, I best go and get me a pint, and I'll see you guys on the next one.